For those of you that are watching us on YouTube, we would just want to express our gratitude and give you a big shout out, a warm welcome. Shall we, everyone?
Shalom, shalom. Hello,
Shalom, shalom, my brotherhood.
Warm 31 degree welcome.
We are so glad that you're here and pray that you will be richly blessed from the message that you're about to receive, that it would touch you and your family. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Tim and Jeanette in Alberta, Canada.
Okay, let's go with the share screen here. Okay, calculating atonement correctly. That's the topic. I'm going to read a verse, and I'm sure you've heard this verse many, many times. If there's one verse and one thing that I would have you remember about everything tonight, it's this verse. And the point is, Malachi 3, verse 6, "For I am Yahuwah, I shall not change." That's the point that I would like to be remembered tonight. Yahuwah does not change. He has said that, and he has showed that in all his patterns. He does not change. And so we're going to look at that a little bit closer. Tishrei 10, the atonement cycle. And it is Yahuwah's most solemn moed of all. My first feast that I ever kept was atonement. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I grabbed a lunch and I went up into the mountains and I stuck my feet in a cold creek and read my scriptures, and that was my first feast. And I was blessed. Believe me, I was very, very blessed. It was great. Leviticus 23:32 is the main Bible text that is used to support the day beginning at sunset. It is a total of only 9 words. From evening to evening, you shall celebrate your Sabbath. And that is Leviticus 23:32b. Remember, Leviticus 23:26 to 32 has a total of 177 words. The last 9 words of the atonement content are used to determine the day start for all yearly Sabbaths. That is only 5% of the words to establish a doctrine. Think about that carefully. Is there something missing? Should we not be considering the rest of the 177 words? Or shall we just stick with the 5% because that's what we've been taught from the person standing in front of us? Questions for atonement. When does this actual Sabbath, Day of Atonement, begin, and when does it end? Oh, I got my pictures in the way here. I forgot to move them. What 2 characteristics that begin the Atonement Sabbath by the evening of Tishrei 9 cause it to take part on 2 days? Yes, you heard correctly, 2 days. Would a false mixture and tradition have an effect? My computer is not cooperating with me. There we go. Number 3, what are we commanded to begin on the evening of Tishrei 9? We're going to look at these things. Malachi 3:6 declares, Yahuwah does not change. Creation week declares all days begin at dawn. Many feast calendars and feast keepers declare the Day of Atonement Sabbath begins at the dusk of sunset on the 9th day. And we're going to look at this. Number 4 question. Where is Yahuwah's scriptural exemption to commence his Day of Atonement at another time, other than what he has declared? Very interesting question. Final question. Is it possible that you have heard it said that the weekly Sabbath begins at sunset, and then Leviticus 23:32 is referenced for support? I've heard that myself many, many times. Have you ever questioned why Yahuwah never informed us why he waited from creation until Moshe received the instructions from on top of Mount Sinai, and that's approximately 2,500 years later, to explain the perimeters of the seventh-day Sabbath? Why did he wait so long to give us the perimeters? Have you ever seen a text where Yahuwah stated one fact, then changed his mind and delivered an opposing command both within one text? These are some of the questions we're going to be looking at tonight, and I hope I've laid this out clear enough that you can understand it. Leviticus 23 delivers to us a premier statement of timing. This is the top statement, and it says in verse 32, the 10th day of the 7th month. Now we're going to look at this, and we're going to see how many times this has been referenced. We're going to see 6 additional reference points indicating that Tishri's 10th cycle of the 7th month is the one and only cycle of the year determined by Yahuwah to be the day for atonement. Yet we're told that the 9th is when it begins. Why is that? Ultimately, who gave this definitive statement of timing for the Day of Atonement? Leviticus 23:6. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, on the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. There can be no mistake that Yahuwah wants us to understand that the 10th of Tishri is the appointed time.
Tim, can I just make a comment here really quick?
Certainly.
Okay, on the last slide, you had mentioned that the 10th day of the 7th month was the premier statement in verse 32. I would like to just correct that. It's verse 27. That is the first place that that premier statement is listed, but it is in verse, yeah. So I just wanted to make that clear because we kind of make these goofs once in a while.
Thank you, Charlene. You're very correct. Thank you for paying attention to detail. That's great. Someone's got my back. The commencement and termination of this solemn festival is firmly anchored in the creation account. That is where we see the dawn to dawn pattern start out in the scriptures. What qualifies the caliber of this cycle? On the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a set-apart gathering for you. A set-apart gathering, that is the caliber, that is what it's all about. Can we safely assume from this text that the 9th of Tishri is also a set-apart convocation? Where in the scriptures do we find a similar or otherwise statement declaring the 9th of Tishri as a Kodesh convocation? Where? I have not been able to find one myself. Here again, the premier point of assertion, and yes, it's verse 27. On the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. And I have that picture up there with a puzzle piece in it. The word "the," that is a piece to the puzzle. It is a singular day. And that in itself will count out the 9th day of Tishri. Please note very carefully the singular form of text used to describe the Day of Atonement as opposed to a plural effect, the Days of Atonement. This makes it very difficult to rationalize the Day of Atonement starting on the 9th cycle of the month and ending on the 10th cycle of the month. That would involve 2 cycles of the month. Let's look at the 6 reference points pointing to the 10th cycle of Tishri. And yes, you're going to become very familiar with this statement. The premier statement, on the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a set-apart gathering for you. That is your first reference point going back and pointing to the 10th day. There's 5 more of them. Let's have a look. Here's reference number 2. And you shall do no work on that same day. And reference number 3, verse 28. For it is the day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahuwah, your Elohim. And there it is, the references, number 2 and number 3, going back to the 10th day. Did you see a 9th in there somewhere? I didn't. Here's reference number 4. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, that's going back to the 10th day, he shall be cut off from his people. Reference number 5 in verse 30. And any being who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. Again, that is a direct reference to the 10th day. And reference point number 6, verse 32. It is referenced back to the 10th day. It is a Sabbath of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. Yes, this it word is once again referencing the 10th cycle of Tishri. Whoops, I went too fast. Thus far, Yahuwah has declared by a premier statement in Leviticus 23, verse 27a, and then referenced directly to the same 6 additional times, that the single cycle of atonement is on Tishri 10. And you're probably wondering, how come I'm stressing this singleness? Well, we're going to be looking at that very, very closely. There has been 0 mention of Tishri 9 up to this point. We now come to what has been a very controversial part of the text, Leviticus 23, verse 32, part B. We have already been thoroughly informed of the what. That would be Tishri 10. Now we're going to learn of the how, and most interestingly, the when of the how. Leviticus 23, verse 32a. It is a Sabbath of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. Once again, that word it is a direct reference to the 10th of Tishri. And the B section of that verse, on the 9th day of the month at evening. Yes, we see the 9th there. And now we're going to look at the how. Leviticus 23:32a, it, Tishri 10, is a Sabbath of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. That is the how. What we are to do is to afflict our souls. This study has no intention of delving into the meaning of the word afflict in this session. Our focus for this study is about the timing of the affliction. The pertinent question then is, what time of the cycle and date of the month could this affliction commence? When Yahuwah indicates the 9th cycle of the month at evening, exactly what part of the 24-hour cycle is this? Before we can determine what the celebration theme for the Festival of Atonement is, we need to establish exactly when this evening time is. The Hebrew word for evening is erev. Let's look at some definitions of this word. And I know a lot of you already know these definitions, but for some new people, we're going to go over it carefully again. And here is the Hebrew English lexicon, and the word erev. The beginning air from the western or darkened part of the heavens begins to mix with the day, which mixture continues all night or till night. When the day is overpowered, the darkness prevails, and the mixture of daylight ceases. And Hebrew lexicon by W.H. Barker, and Mark, this is from 1776. Evening, to mix, mingle, the evening when darkness mixes with the light to be darkened, obscured, the woof, to be intermixed with the warp, a mixed multitude, a swarm, a willow, it being of a mixed weft and evening. The etymological dictionary of the Hebrew language, and same word, erev. And I'm just going to read to you the highlighted green ones. Mixed, mix, mixed, mingled, mixture, and woof. And no, that's not a puppy dog. What is a woof? Let's check the Webster's Dictionary first and then the Strong's Concordance. A woof, to weave the threads across the warp, the weft. And Strong's has got the woof in there also. Mixed multitude, mingled people. And we go to Erev from 1 Kings 10:15, from OT 61:48, the web or transverse threads of cloth. Also a mixture, mingled, mixed multitude, and the woof once more. And the OT 6148, Arab, the primitive root, the meaning is to braid. And in that braid, quite easily we can see a mixing. Intermix, meddle, and mingle. Note, the variety of meanings for OT 6154 strongly suggests a mixing and mingling. That's because in Hebrew, OT 6154 is a family word with OT 6153, evening, meaning there will be strong similarities. What two specific time frames are identified when this verb with a mixing effect is applied to a 24-hour cycle? The two twilights? When does the light and darkness form a mixing action? And that is most definitely a verb. Is it somewhere after the direct sunlight has been removed, after the heat of the light season? And be sure to note, the qualifier for pointing to the pre-sunrise mixture of light and darkness is not seen in these verses of Leviticus 23, 27 to 32. Therefore, we will not be looking to dawn. The Erev, or evening mixture, is after the sun has occurred, thus allowing the mixing of soft sunlight with the ensuing darkness. The absence of direct sunlight allows the mixture effect needed to fulfill the Hebrew definitions. Here is our pertinent text again to refresh our memories. Leviticus 23:32. It, the 10th day of Tishri, is a Sabbath of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. On the 9th day of the month, at evening, now we understand when the evening is, that is where the sun has gone away and the indirect sunlight or the residual sunlight is allowed to mix with the darkness. We will now look to charts for the light mixing with darkness part of the 24-hour cycle. The full purpose of this chart is to express or to expose the exact location of the mixing of light with darkness, the evening factor, for the 9th cycle of the month. And you'd be very surprised how many people do not understand this, and that's why I'm trying to lay it out so we can understand and all be on the same page. The erroneous sunset theory teaching that Atonement Sabbath starts directly before or after the sunset will be exposed soon. Does the Sabbath of Atonement begin on the 9th evening of the month? Or can it possibly be something else that starts there? Let's look at it, shall we?
Join the meeting.
On the next slide is a statement showing the results of starting the Atonement Sabbath at sunset of Tishri 9. In other words, it exposes the situation which occurs when starting the Atonement Sabbath on the evening of the 9th of Tishri. We will then examine why this unique situation would, or would not exist, and see if there is scriptural support for either scenario. Note where the green oval is, where it sits. There is a huge problem area where this green oval exists, so please watch for it very carefully. How can Tishri 9 be a preparation day for the Sabbath of Atonement on Tishri 10 and a Sabbath day as well? Okay, if you look on the left side of your screen, you'll see we have the sunset there just after the 8th. So the 8th day has completed, and the sun has well, in sunset theory, the 8th has been completed by the sun. And Tishri 9, the even comes. This is your evening twilight mixture of light and darkness. This is the beginning of Tishri 9, right after the sunset. This is according to sunset theory. So what's going to happen here, I'm going to make some statements, and then I'm going to show to you why it is that I say these things. So when the sunset starts the Sabbath on Tishri 9, we're going to have 24 hours of Sabbath, and we're going to have 24 hours of affliction. We haven't started Tishri 10 yet. The sunset of Tishri 9 occurs, and that brings in the twilight, the even of Tishri 10, Atonement Day. So when the even of Tishri 10 comes in, this is going to be our second 24 hours of Sabbath, and it's going to be our second 24 hours of affliction. Atonement days, 48 hours. Tishri 9 and 10, where's the scriptures for that? Where is the scriptures that tell us 48 hours for atonement? I don't believe the scripture tells us that. So let's look at the problem areas and discover why it is that there will be 48 hours if we start Atonement Sabbath at sunset on the 9th. Please note the location of the 9th cycle evening after sunset, colored purple for identification purposes, on the left side of the chart. We are told that sunset changes the day here, and you'll notice that the 8th day has finished, and the sunset occurs, and the 9th cycle twilight or evening is there. The sunset of the 8th day occurs, and then the mixture of light and darkness commences, initiating the evening mixture of the 9th of Tishri. All 24 hours of the 9th begin right there where your arrow is pointing. There's your 24 hours, sunset to sunset of the 9th of Tishri. There can be only one evening mixture per 24-hour period. It is at this point that some declare the start of the Atonement Sabbath day. That's when we see that from evening to evening you shall observe your Sabbath. So we have to be careful about those words. We have to understand what they mean. Here's the reminder. In sunset theory, the 9th cycle evening, again in your purple. The sunset preceding the 9th of Tishri evening is declared by many as being the start of the Atonement Sabbath. This means the first 24-hour period of Atonement Sabbath would begin here, before the 10th of Tishri has had a chance to begin. And this would be Tishri the 9th, and there would be 24 hours of Atonement Sabbath. Is this what we read in scriptures? That is 24 hours of atonement before Tishri 10 even begins. This would be the first of 2 days for atonement celebration. You need to think about that very carefully. Are we supposed to start this Sabbath on the 9th evening of Tishri in sunset theory? Is that what it's supposed to be? Tishri 9th, the 24 hours of Atonement Sabbath. That is 24 hours of atonement before Tishri 10 even begins. This would be the first of 2 days for atonement celebration. Where was it that the word of Yahuwah was disregarded and set aside as if just more rubble? Sunset theory. Please note the location of the ninth cycle sunset. Okay, the 9th day has finished, it's completed, and the sunset now changes the day according to sunset theory. So we're going to look at that evening. The sunset of the 9th day occurs, and then the mixture of light and darkness commences, initiating the evening mixture of the 10th of Tishri, all 24 hours of it, sunset to sunset. The sunset has triggered the start of the 10th of Tishri. At this point, there has already been 24 hours of atonement day, and that would be sunset to sunset on Tishri 9. That is, if the evening of the 9th starts atonement day. Does Yahuwah require 2 weekdays and 48 hours of atonement affliction? Okay, the common mistake. In sunset theory, it is common to reckon the evening twilight before the sunset, allowing the usage of Tishri 9 for the start of the Day of Atonement. That sunset is declared to happen that evening twilight is declared to happen before the sunset. That would mean the darkness must be allowed to mix with the daylight while the sun is still in the air or still in the sky. Oh, does that work? Have you ever seen evening darkness come when the sun is in the sky? And if you look carefully, Yahuwah's twilight, mixing of light and darkness, is where the green rectangle is, and that is after the sunset. Only when the sun has set can the darkness be allowed to mix with the light. The direct sunlight prevents a light and darkness mixture here. It cannot happen because there's direct sunlight in the sky. The Hebrew definitions cannot be fulfilled here. Declaring an evening before sunset voids Yahuwah's word. The Arev, or the evening twilight mixture, normally cannot occur before the sunset. And yet, many feast keepers declare that there is a twilight before the sunset. Why? Because they want to prevent 24 hours of atonement Sabbath on Tishri 9. Does Tishri 9 exclusively have 2 evenings? Have you ever seen a day with 2 evenings? Yahuwah's Tishri 9th twilight mixing of light and darkness is here after sunset. But man, in order to prevent a 48-hour atonement Sabbath, defies the Hebrew definitions of the word Erev, the mixing effect. Man desires to place the second Erev, the mixture of Tishri 9, prior to the sunset, where the direct rays of sunlight prevent any darkness from mixing with the light of day. So here we have a very serious problem when people want to defy, go against, and reject the Hebrew definitions of the word. Once you start rejecting the Hebrew words, you can make up and do anything that you want, but it will not be in alignment with Yahuwah's word. Look at this carefully. Is it correct to apply 2 evening mixtures in one 24-hour period? You can, if you want to get away with not having 24 hours of atonement Sabbath on Tishri 9, The problem is you're not in alignment with Yahuwah's word. When man defies the Hebrew word definitions, is man at the same time defying Yahuwah's covenant of the day and the covenant of the night? And reference that to Jeremiah 33:20. When man declares darkness occurs before sunset, is this a confusion of Yahuwah's covenant of the day? If that is confusion, where does that confusion come from? Who is the father of confusion? A complicated problem needing a solution. If sunset theory wants to have Tishri 10 as the Day of Atonement, then this theory has no choice but to claim that Tishri 9 has 2 evenings, like this. An evening after the sunset of Tishri 8 that begins the 9th day, and an evening mixture of light and darkness prior to and during the sunset on Tishri 9 to end the 9th day. That would be 2 evenings in 1 day. Sunset theory would then be demanding 2 evenings back to back, split by a sunset. Think about that very carefully. Does that make any sense? 2 evenings back to back, split by a sunset? Who ever heard of any day having 2 evenings? Any solution to the problem? Yahuwah's covenant calendar requires Tishri 9 to need only 1 evening, not 2, to honor these celebration guidelines for Tishri 10. Next, we will be examining every segment of verse 32 for a complete understanding of the true context of this verse. There are 2 times when, by divine intervention, it became dark during the time when the sun was high in the sky. The third event is under question. Number 1, when the plague of darkness blackened Egypt and Pharaoh's heart. That was a divine intervention. Number 2, when at Golgotha, with Yahusha hanging on the cross, it became dark from the 6th hour from dawn until the 9th hour from dawn. And that was most certainly a divine intervention. A very dark day on this earth. Number 3, here's a very interesting incident that's recorded in history. The dark day of May 19 in 1780 in New England and Canada. This event is definitely questionable and up for deep discussion. How often have you seen darkness take over the sky when the sun is still directly shining on the land? It makes no sense whatsoever to have the Day of Atonement start at sunset. By default of sunset theory characteristics, total misalignment with Genesis 1 and Yahuwah's statutes become inevitable. The question then are, when does Tishri 10 begin? What commences in the evening of Tishri 9? We are told to come to Yahusha as little children, ready to learn from an uncluttered platform. Matthew 18:3 says, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. So what is it that we should do? Shall we become as little children? Let's put on our little children hats and look at what the scriptures declare for the start of Tishri 10, the 10th day of atonement. And you see this little child here, as cute as a button, putting on a hat. And he's putting on something that he doesn't understand, and it's pulling over his eyes, and he can't quite understand what's going on. But you know what? He's stepping out in faith because he has been told to do it. His father suggested it. and he's pulling over the hat, and he's doing it in faith, and the Father will bring him understanding. Let's look at the covenant calendar of Tishri 9 and see if this makes more sense according to the scriptures. Please note the 9th of Tishri morning Erev, or the twilight mixture, and it is before sunrise. Tishri 9 starts at dawn as per Genesis 1 and the creation account. And you'll see that blue square just before the sunrise. There's the next one. That is sunset. The sunset of the 9th of Tishri occurs, and the Erev, the evening twilight mixture period, ushers in the night season. And my question to you is, what else does this Erev initiate? Remember, this is the 9th of Tishri evening. So what is it that begins on the 9th evening of Tishri? There is an extremely important aspect that is very specifically actuated by the evening mixture of Tishri 9. However, we will continue by looking at the timing of Tishri 10 according to Yahuwah's covenant calendar, and we are going to come back to this point of the evening of Tishri 9. Okay, we're going to look at Tishri 10 here. Tishri 10 starts at dawn, and that is again as per Genesis 1 creation. The 10th of Tishri, morning Erev, twilight mixture, before the sunrise. And the Atonement Sabbath begins at the first light of dawn and lasts until the following dawn. 24 hours only of Tishri 10 Shabbat. The actual physical Sabbath, or Shabbat, of Atonement Day begins exactly as every other day since creation, with the eyelashes of dawn, and you'll see that in Job 3:9. That is the eyelashes of dawn. That comes up before the sunrise. When does the Sabbath of Tishri 10 end? Tishri 10 starts at dawn as per Genesis 1 creation. Leviticus 23:27 says, on the 10th day of this 7th month is Yom Kippurim, or Day of Atonement. It shall be a Kodesh gathering for you. The word day is Yom, and that not only means the light season, but it defines a 24-hour period also. When Yahuwah desires to be precise about individual time-related identities, he informs us. Thus saith Yahuwah, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, that there should not be day and night in their season. That comes from Jeremiah 33:22. So Yahuwah has a covenant of the day and a covenant of the night. They are two separate covenants, and we need to respect them and not break them. Why then do we not see on the 10th light season, with precision and accuracy, of this 7th month as Yom Kippurim, the light season, it shall be a Kodesh gathering to you. So my question to you now, we are told that the 10th is the Kodesh gathering, the holy convocation. So my question to you is, if the 9th of Tishri was supposed to start the Sabbath, why did Yahuwah not grasp this golden opportunity to define with absolute precise accuracy light season only perimeters of Atonement Sabbath, as well as other Sabbaths? Why did Yahuwah not define with blinding accuracy that Atonement Sabbath ended with the light season? Right here would be the perfect opportunity for Yahuwah to tell us that the Atonement Sabbath ends with the light season, but he did not do that. Why is it that in Genesis 1, day 1 ended at dawn, day 2 ended at dawn, day 3, 4, 5, and 6 ended at dawn, day 7 ended at dawn, Matthew 28:1, the Shabbat ended at dawn, and I'm going to read that one more time. Matthew 28:1, the Shabbat ended at dawn. That is when it goes light. That word is epiphosko in that particular verse. And Exodus 12:10 and 11, and Luke 23, the preparation day ended at dawn. And there is no Hebrew word that defines a Shabbat that does not require a rest period from this world's activities. Why then do we not find Yahuwah's instruction to end the Sabbath at the end of the twilight? Why do we not find this specific pattern anywhere in the scriptures? What gives us the right to claim the Atonement Sabbath ends at twilight or evening, just because the Atonement observation theme does? Why didn't Yahuwah tell us right in this particular account that the Sabbath ends at twilight, if that's what he wanted? Okay, let's move on to a very interesting section of Leviticus 23:32. Here's the section of the verse that's controversial to some. Leviticus 23:32. On the 9th day of the month, at evening, that's Erev, Yahuwah commands something to happen. What is it? We have observed Sunset Theory's claim for Atonement Day to begin at sunset on the 9th of Tishri being laid out clearly onto charts. We have seen by default the Atonement Day will stretch over a period of 48 hours. Is it becoming quite clear that many have not understood the scriptures correctly? What other meaning could there possibly be that will find alignment with the scriptures beginning in the evening prior to the start of Tishri 10? It must be something that is integrally connected with Atonement Day. What is it? Have you thought about that? Leviticus 23:32. It is a Shabbat of rest to you, and you shall afflict your beings. The Shabbat of the 10th day of Tishri, Leviticus 23:27, has for the 6th time once again been referenced. We are then told of the type of theme or affliction by which we are to conduct ourselves within this ultimately important cycle. Then comes the second part of the verse. Leviticus 23:32b. On the 9th day of the month, at evening, that's the twilight after sunset, we have just been informed of the starting point of what? The Sabbath? No. If you go to the top of the screen and read the second part of that verse, it says, you shall afflict your beings. That's what it's talking about. At the evening, the Erev, the twilight mixture, the affliction, whatever you figure and whatever you study that out and decide it to be, that affliction, the theme on how you're going to observe the Sabbath, that affliction is what starts at the evening of Tishri 9. Not his Sabbath day of atonement. The time to begin our personal affliction is at the Erev, the evening twilight, the light and darkness mixture by definition. In terms of timing, there is no place existing, neither in this very verse nor elsewhere in the scriptures, that would indicate in any way that this Feast of Atonement is an anomaly. The Shabbat for the Feast of Atonement always begins exactly the same as every other cycle at dawn. Remember that verse? Yahuwah says, I do not change. And his patterns do not change neither. When the days started at dawn, at creation, that is the way they start continuously forever in the Shana year. I can't read the top of my verse here. After the sun has set on the 9th cycle of Tishri, the 7th month, the evening timing, which is the proper beginning of the observation theme. Now that's different than the Shabbat. The observation theme, the way that you're going to observe your Sabbath, is what begins in the evening. And this evening time ushers in and signals forward to the Sabbath of Atonement, which begins at the inception of the Boker twilight. That word Boker means morning. That is when the Sabbath day of Atonement begins. But the observation theme by which and how you are going to respect the Day of Atonement begins with the evening on Tishri 9. Consider very carefully the words as they are preserved by Yahuwah. The Hebrew words within verse 32 or any other verse never indicate the Shabbat of Atonement begins at sunset. To claim otherwise is a full misconstruing of the words of Yahuwah. And there is more. Leviticus 23:32. From Erev to Erev. That is, by definition, from the mixing of light and darkness after the sun has set until 24 hours later when, once again, the sun has been removed from our sight and the light and darkness mixture commences. In other words, Yahuwah's applied celebration theme for the set-apart Feast of Atonement begins with an evening mixture and ends at the next evening mixture. These are the time perimeters for the observant or the observation theme only. Nothing added and nothing taken away. Let the Hebrew words that are written prevail. Leviticus 23:32d. You observe your Shabbat. The KJV uses celebrate here. There is no way this phrase can be construed to say your Sabbath of Atonement starts here, not according to the written words. When the premier statement with the 6 additional references to the 10th of Tishri for the Atonement Shabbat are considered, it becomes clear that this phrase points to the theme implied by which to regard the Atonement Sabbath. This 12 hours from evening until dawn is a mindset preparatory period for the actual Atonement Shabbat. To and for Yahuwah, that is a celebration. Sometimes we think of celebration as a party, a good time, yahoo, jump up and down. That's not what this is talking about. A celebration is the theme by how you observe this Shabbat. Let's look at this concept in a chart format and see if it upholds the statutes. We are the covenant calendar on Tishri 9. Note the 9th of Tishri morning, Erev. That is the twilight mixture before the sunrise. Tishri 9 starts at dawn, as per Genesis 1, creation. Tishri 9 has a normal preparation light season. We are to perform normal life's duties, providing it does not fall on a 7th-day Sabbath. Tishri 9 starts at dawn and ends at dawn. It always contains 2 twilight mixtures, one before sunrise and one after the sunrise. Dawn to dawn, 24 hours. I'm going to be returning to this particular slide in a short bit. Here is Covenant Calendar Tishri 10, and it's the same thing. The pattern is exactly the same. It does not change, just as Yahuwah says, I do not change. And note the 10th of Tishri morning Erev, the twilight mixture. That is the light before the sunrise. Again, it starts at dawn, same as creation. Atonement Shabbat begins at the first light of dawn and lasts until the following dawn. That is 24 hours only of Tishri 10 Shabbat. The simplicity created by Yahuwah is awesome. But what about the even to even starting on the 9th of Tishri? Here's Covenant Calendar again, Tishri 9. Tishri 9 starts at dawn as per creation, Genesis 1. Preparation Day, Tishri 9, we have been given a very special command for the precise time when the moment the sun has removed itself. And that is after the sunset, that is in the twilight mixture. And the verse that relates directly to that, Leviticus 23:32. On the 9th day of the month, at evening, from evening to evening, you observe your Shabbat. The timing for this command is after the sunset, not before, as rabbinical desires at times demand us to believe. And that observation for your Shabbat is the theme by which you respect the Atonement Day come dawn. But that theme of how you're going to respect the day is started at Tishri 9, or at the evening of Tishri 9. And preparing Tishri 9, preparing for the Atonement Sabbath. And you'll see in the left-hand side, there's the Tishri 9 and Tishri 9 there. From even on the Rev 9th to even of the Rev on the 10th. That is your even to even. That is where your theme of observance ends, or starts and ends. 24 hours, sunset to sunset. There's your two sunsets. And that is on the 9th day of the month at evening. From evening to evening, you observe your Shabbat. That is your theme that you apply to your observation on Atonement Sabbath come dawn. And that observe is another word in as respect. It's how you are to, a theme by which you apply to that day of Atonement Day. That is how you are to observe. And you are to begin that at sunset on Tishri 9. That does not mean the Sabbath begins at evening. It's not stated that way in your scriptures, not according to the Hebrew words. And again, Tishri 9, prepare for the Atonement Sabbath. There is your evenings. Covenant calendar is from evening to evening, 24 hours only of the thematic observation, even to even. And here we are from dawn, the Erev on the 10th to dawn, the Erev on the 11th. There's 24 hours for Tishri 9 from dawn to dawn. You'll see that on the left half, and on the right half of the page, from dawn to dawn, that is your Atonement Sabbath. Dawn to dawn, dawn to dawn. 24 hours only of Atonement Sabbath. Leviticus 23:27. On the 10th day of the month is Yom HaKippurim, Day of Atonement. It shall be a Kodesh gathering for you. And remember that word "it" is speaking directly to the 10th day. It does not indicate the 9th as a Kodesh gathering. The Sabbath does not start at sunset. And here we see 24 hours only of Atonement Sabbath. And that is exactly what we read in the scriptures. The Atonement Sabbath does not happen on Tishri 9. And the observation, the theme observation goes from evening to evening. Tishri 9 to Tishri 10 evening. 24 hours of atonement thematic observation. Remember, this study is not about how to observe the atonement celebration, but is focusing specifically on timing alone. And I might be going through this a little bit too fast for you, so I hope that you will look this up on our website, www.study the calendar, and go over it yourself at your own leisure to make absolute certain that you understand this very, very well. The Atonement Sabbath is from dawn to dawn, and there is your 2 dawns. That is your 24 hours only of Atonement Sabbath. And I hope you can see the division of the 2 different sections right there by the 2 arrows. They kind of overlap. Have you noticed there are 2 things to understand about this Day of Atonement study? The 24-hour, the affliction celebration, is from the even of Tishri 9 to the even of Tishri 10. And the second one, the 24-hour solemn observation, is from the dawn of Tishri 10 to the dawn of Tishri 11. That is when your Sabbath, your Atonement Sabbath is, 24 hours of it from dawn to dawn. But yet your theme by how you observe the Sabbath, how you respect the Sabbath, that starts at the even of Tishri 9 and goes to the even of Tishri 10. Day, or Yom, not only means the light season, but it defines a 24-hour period also. These are some verses to consider when thinking about the 24-hour period identified by Yom. Some are arguable, some are not. There are many more. And these are just the verses where you see the word Yom that includes a 24-hour period. Yom does not just declare a light season as by what is declared by some people. Yes, most certainly, Yom is mostly applied to and usually indicates a light season, but it is not the rule. Here's the word from Yahuwah. The word Shema, and it's a primitive root, and it's to hear intelligently. Let's read Proverbs 28:9. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be an abomination. So back up to the definition, to hear intelligently. Let's read the rest of it. Often with implication of attention and obedience. Positively, to tell. We have just seen the word according to the original writings of the Hebrew language. What you do with this information is in your hands. The Hebrew word Shema means to hear intelligently, but that is not all. The full meaning is to hear with the intention to obey and act accordingly. We can listen all we want, but unless we are willing to take action in our lives, we are as a stone stuck in the mud. I pray everyone viewing the dawn start to Yahuwah's days will take this information to heart and act according to the scriptures as they are written. May Yahuwah bless and guide you always. And I just want to say again, I hope that if I went through this too fast tonight, I hope that you will look it up on the website, studythecalendar.com, and go through it again, because there's a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts in here that can go by really, really quickly. And I kind of went through it a little fast tonight. So I hope that you'll take it up and go through it step by step really carefully and make sure of what it says. What's the next presentation? And that will be on February 15, verse 19. I'm going to start that one again because it went too fast. When was the veil rent in twain? That is the crucifixion. Is there such a thing as a sixth cycle crucifixion? Or I can say a Friday crucifixion. And I would like you to notice the spelling on crucifixion. When was that temple rent in twain? Was it on a Wednesday or was it on a Friday in pagan terms? That is what we're going to look at next. A very, very, very revealing study in the Gospels and how it all pulls together. And I guarantee this is going to be a very interesting study. I look forward to it. And that is the end. And of course, if you need any questions, call Charlene. No, you can call me too.
That's funny.
And I'll leave this up here for now for those who want to copy that down, whatever. But this is the end, so you can get out your questions and call Charlene.
Wonderful job. Wonderful. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Great job. So we have some questions tonight from the attendees. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, if you're not able to attend the question part afterwards, which I'll just let you know right now, oftentimes is a very blessed time. You can join Covenant Calendar Club at studythecalendar.com up in the right-hand corner on the research section or resources section. So, anyway, questions, comments?
I have a, this is Conrad speaking.
Yes, Conrad.
Yes, I'm here. This Julian Morgan Stern, in his book called Supplementary Studies in the Calendars of Ancient Israel, make a comment on page 25. He said that in Leviticus 23:32b, manifestly was a very late addition to the legislation of Yom Kippur.
Is that right?
Which is, he has it here. He says, I have been checking the Septuagint because I know that in the Septuagint, they had, they had the name of the Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh inside of it in Paleo Hebrew. I saw that manuscript. Later on, it was removed for curious. The scribe, I wish to kiss him, left the name of the creator in the Paleo Hebrew. Later on, somewhere in the 2nd century, it was